The lights of Washington flicker in the early morning haze as cameras begin to roll inside the Treasury Department. The air is tense. Behind the podium, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent adjusts his papers, preparing for what many here believe will be one of the most consequential statements on global trade this year. Moments later, he begins, calm, deliberate, but unmistakably firm.
John Decker, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ambassador Greer, I really appreciate your taking the opportunity. U.S. Supreme Court. It's an incredibly important case that could impact the constitutionality of the president's unilateral tariffs on America's trading partners.
Thank you, everybody. With apologies again, they do have to get to another appointment right now. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And make no mistake, this is China versus the world. They have put these unacceptable export controls on the entire world. China is a command and control economy, and we and our allies will neither be commanded nor controlled. This should be a clear sign to our allies that we must work together, and work together we will. And we are not going to let a group of bureaucrats in Beijing try to manage the global supply chains.
Make no mistake, he says, this is China versus the world. His words hang in the air like a warning bell echoing through the chamber, drawing the attention of reporters, diplomats and market analysts watching around the globe. The United States is once again confronting Beijing, not over tariffs or currency manipulation this time, but over something far more strategic: rare earth minerals. These 17 metallic elements found deep within the Earth's crust are the lifeblood of modern technology, from smartphones and electric vehicles to fighter jets and missile systems, and China by far controls their global supply. Bessent's tone hardens as he continues. China has put these unacceptable export controls on the entire world, he declares. It is a command and control economy, and we and our allies will neither be commanded nor controlled. The rare earth dispute has been brewing for months. In August, Beijing announced new export restrictions on gallium, germanium and other critical minerals, citing national security concerns. But in Washington, officials saw it differently, as a direct act of economic coercion aimed at testing the West's dependence on Chinese supply chains. Inside the press hall, journalists scribble furiously as Bessent leans forward. This should be a clear sign to our allies that we must work together, he says, and work together we will. He pauses for effect, the message unmistakable. The United States is calling for a global alliance, not just of convenience, but of strategy to counter Beijing's growing economic leverage. Then comes a line that makes headlines almost instantly. We are not going to let a group of bureaucrats in Beijing try to manage global supply chains. For Washington, the rare earth issue is no longer just about trade. It's about national security, technological sovereignty, and the balance of global power. Bessent continues, connecting the dots between China's resource policies and its geopolitical ambitions. Not only is China fueling Russia's war, he says, but its actions have once again demonstrated the risk of being dependent on them, on rare earths, and for that matter, anything.
Not only is China fueling Russia's war, but China's actions have once again demonstrated the risk of being dependent on them, on rare earths, and for that matter, anything. If China wants to be an unreliable partner to the world, then the world will have to decouple. The world does not want to decouple. We want to de-risk.
China's announcement is nothing more than a global supply chain power grab. While China has taken a number of retaliatory trade actions against the United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, and others in recent years, this move is not proportional retaliation. It is an exercise in economic coercion on every country in the world.
The room falls silent. The statement is a direct accusation linking Beijing's economic maneuvers to Moscow's military aggression in Ukraine. For the Biden administration, and now for the Trump administration's successor, the idea is clear. China's stranglehold over critical minerals isn't just a commercial issue, it's a geopolitical weapon. If China wants to be an unreliable partner to the world, Bessent continues, then the world will have to disengage. The world does not want to decouple. We want to de-risk that phrase. De-risk becomes the new buzzword of Washington's foreign policy vocabulary. It signals a shift away from confrontation and toward cautious diversification, reducing exposure to China without triggering an all-out economic divorce. The camera pans to US Trade Representative Jameson Greer, seated beside the Treasury Secretary. Greer, a key architect of America's new economic strategy, leans into his microphone and adds his own sharp assessment. China's announcement, he says, is nothing more than a global supply chain power grab. His voice is measured but filled with conviction. While China has taken a number of retaliatory trade actions against the United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, and others in recent years, Greer continues, this move is not proportional retaliation. It is an exercise in economic coercion on every country in the world. Reporters exchange glances. The statement leaves little room for diplomatic interpretation. Washington is framing this as a global standoff, not a bilateral dispute. Behind the rhetoric, however, lies a complex web of negotiations. Greer reveals a crucial detail. Both countries agreed to this pause on tariffs and rare earth measures for 90 days while we pursue further negotiations, he says. And there is a published agreement about this on official US and Chinese websites. It's called the Geneva Agreement. It's not a secret. It's accessible. It's published. We keep our tariffs low. They keep their rare earths flowing. The revelation sends ripples through financial markets. The so-called Geneva Agreement, an interim truce between the world's two largest economies, is suddenly thrust into the spotlight. But its future, as Greer hints, is uncertain. For months, both sides had maintained a delicate balance. The US kept tariffs on Chinese electronics and metals low, while China continued to export rare earth materials used by Western industries. But now, with Beijing's latest restrictions, that balance appears to be collapsing. Economic analysts in Washington warn that the consequences could be far-reaching. Prices of key minerals are already spiking. Manufacturers from Detroit to Dusseldorf are scrambling to find alternative sources. And in Canberra, Tokyo and Brussels, capitals once divided on trade strategy, a quiet consensus is forming. The world must reduce its dependence on China's resource dominance.
Both countries agreed to this pause on tariffs and rare earth measures for 90 days while we pursued further negotiations, which have gone on quite successfully for the past 6 months. And there is a published agreement about this on official US government and Chinese websites. This is the Geneva Agreement. It's not a secret. It's out there. It's published. We keep our tariffs low. They keep the rare earths flowing.
The voiceover shifts to a wider global perspective. From mining projects in Australia's Northern Territory to new processing plants in Sweden, the race is on to secure supply chains that are less vulnerable to Beijing's decisions. The European Union's Critical Raw Materials Act and the US Defence Production Expansion Initiative are just two examples of how the geopolitical chessboard is being redrawn. Back in Washington, the tone of Bessent's briefing turns almost defiant. We have to be realistic, he says. This is not about punishing China. It's about protecting our industries, our economies, and our values. He steps away from the podium briefly as a reporter calls out a question. Mr. Secretary, is this a new Cold War? Bessent pauses, looks up, and replies with a half smile. No, this is not a Cold War. It's a wake-up call. His words encapsulate the new doctrine of Western economic policy, one that blends competition with caution, resistance with restraint. Jameson Greer echoes that sentiment. We don't seek conflict, he says, but we will not allow any one nation to dictate the rules of global trade. The US stance is mirrored across allied capitals. In Tokyo, Japanese officials voiced support for Washington's approach, calling China's actions deeply concerning. In Brussels, European Commissioner Maros Sefcovic warns that Europe cannot afford to be naive about supply chain risks. And in Canberra, Australian trade officials, whose country is one of the largest producers of rare earths outside China, pledged to expand output to ensure global stability. The camera returns to the press room. Bessent and Greer exit the stage, leaving behind a flurry of questions and flashing lights. The message has been delivered, loud, deliberate, and unmistakable. Outside, analysts debate what comes next. Will China respond with further restrictions? Will the US move to subsidize domestic mining? Or will both sides find a way back to compromise under the Geneva framework? In the hours that follow, Beijing's Ministry of Commerce issues a brief statement saying that its export measures are consistent with national security needs and international norms, but the ambiguity of that response only deepens global uncertainty. The camera cuts to scenes from global markets, traders monitoring screens in New York, Shanghai, and Frankfurt, mining trucks rolling across the Australian outback, engineers inspecting cobalt refineries in Zambia. The story of rare earths has become the story of 21st century power. As the narrative unfolds, the voiceover widens its lens, connecting the economic struggle to the deeper ideological divide shaping the world. This is about more than minerals, the narrator explains. It's about trust. Who can be trusted to keep the world's technologies running, and who can be trusted not to weaponize that power? By nightfall, Washington's skyline glows under the light of another long day of diplomacy and debate. The podium stands empty now, but the words spoken there reverberate far beyond the Treasury walls. China versus the world, Bessent had said, and for many watching, it felt less like a warning and more like a declaration of the economic battles yet to come. As the credits fade, the closing voiceover leaves viewers with one final reflection. In an era defined by chips, batteries, and data, the smallest elements on Earth have become the biggest leverage in global politics. Rare earths are no longer just materials, they are the currency of power. And in this struggle for control, every nation will soon have to choose, depend, diversify, or disengage.
Controls on the world. Mr. Secretary.
Good. Thank you, Ambassador Greer.